Hello folks, it's the 1st of January 2026, so Happy New Year to you. I'm just outside the east coastal town of Aberlady, and today we're going to explore the site of one of the earliest and largest Norman castles in this land. But we're also going to explore the story of a knight of this ilk, a knight who held a very high position in Scotland at the time. But first, there are some interesting things to explore along the way. It's an extremely cold wind here on the east coast today, and it's really chilling. I wouldn't like to take a dip in that water. Aberlady was once the port for Haddington, which lies about another 5 or 6 miles inland. But people have been coming here since the 7th or 6th century, and pilgrims came here. It was on a par with Iona in Lindisfarne. So a very important area, a very religious area, and a very productive area. This here is known as Coffin Lane, and the reason being that we have this cemetery right over the wall here. The square tower here that you can see in the church, parts of this tower can date back to the 1400s, the early 1400s. Possibly even the 14th century. And housed up there is an ancient cross, or part of an ancient cross. And the locals of Aberlady made a replica of that Celtic cross. In 1863, a fragment of that cross, that early Christian cross, was found in one of the walls adjacent to the kirkyard. And this, and these intricate, amazing little carvings on this cross, are what it would have looked like when it stood there, overlooking the bay of Aberlady. Now, one of the fascinating things here, just outside the church boundary here, is this stone, or rather, these set of steps. And what these are, this is known as the louping stone, or the louping on stone, and people would climb these steps so that they could get onto their horse before or after the service in the church there. Very, very thoughtful of them. The louping stone. Aberlady is a beautiful small village but unmistakably the sound of the wildfowl from the bay, the seagulls, ever present. And here we approach now the Mercat Cross, or what remains of it. No doubt, once it was in its full extent, damaged by the Reformation. But it stands here in the main street. Two wrought iron bars holding it together there. People travel for many miles around, nature lovers, to come to Aberlady Bay. Aberlady Bay tidal, and there are over 1,000 acres when that tide goes out. It is a bird watcher's paradise. If you like reading Scottish history, and in particularly reading novels about Scottish history, no novel writer becomes any larger than the late Nigel Tranter. And this is Quarry House. Quarry House was the home to Nigel and May Tranter. And from here, Nigel Tranter penned all those classics. The Wallace, the Bruce trilogy, all of these books that we come to know and come to love. And I think Tranter had written 90 or over 100 books from Quarry House here. And he would leave this house each day and he would cross this bridge up there, which is known as the Bridge to Enchantment. That's what he so named it. And he would spend countless hours and days roaming the bay, letting his imagination go, taking his notebooks and laying the groundwork for those fabulous novels and that great contribution that he made to Scottish history. You're just looking back there towards Quarry House, which was Nigel's home, and here's a monument to him. Nigel Tranter, 1909 to 2000, Scottish writer, who walked this coastline daily, writing as he went. When I was growing up as a boy, my father had one Nigel Tranter book in his entire library. And it wasn't a large library, it was quite compact. But that book was The Wallace. And for me, I've read it many, many times throughout the years. Hello, sir. Now, I have read The Wallace many times over the years, and for me it is Tranter's best. He doesn't beat that, in my opinion. Even the Bruce trilogy, which is great. I mean, there's nothing in Scottish history that Tranter has not covered. He goes all the way back to Columba, Kenneth Mac Alpin, straight through all the Norman period, right up to modern day. But for me, The Wallace is the best. If you have not read it, do read it, because although it's a novel, Nigel Tranter's intricate understanding of the land, of maps, of the terrain is second to none. I'm yet to find an author who can match it or even come close to it. So his books are very good for that reason. We have this old Ducot over here, but what you see in front of you is Luffness House. Now, this is mostly built on the site that was Luffness Castle, and Luffness Castle was one of the largest 12th century Norman castles of its time, with a moat and everything. And you can see some of the ramparts in the foreground. I've just spoken to the gentleman who owns it. He is one of the Hope family, and they own it now. Previously it was the Hepburns. At first, the castle was built by Gospatrick, the first Earl of Lothian, of Dunbar, and that became Cospatrick. But it later fell to the Lindsays, the de Lindsey family, and they owned all of this area. And one particular night, David de Lindsey, who was Baron here. Now, if you're familiar with the name Lindsay, he also held lands in Upper Clydesdale, Crawford, which you may know as Crawford Castle, back then known as Tower Lindsay, and in the Upper Clyde Valley and into the Lowther Hills. They also held territories in Ayrshire. But this is ancient place, and it's beautiful, overlooking Aberlady Bay, which is just beyond there. Nigel Tranter wrote a book about this very place and about David de Lindsey, and that book is called Crusader. And this was David de Lindsey's castle here at Luffness. A huge building, towers, moat, marvellous defences, and you can still see the groundwork of some of that old castle in these grounds. Now, just behind Luffness House, which you can see through the trees there, that was a lovely gentleman I just met, by the way. He gave me a history lesson on the rough wooing period. But what you'll see directly in front of you, see where the deer is just congregating up on top of that mound there. 4 or 5 of them I see. This ancient mound, when you look at the scale of it and how it stretches, beautiful deer. When you look at the scale of it and how it stretches all the way up there towards today's modern castle grounds, and it comes all the way around here. This area below would have been part of the moat, and this would have been part of that ancient medieval castle. So we're now walking in what would have been the defensive moat, and when you climb high through all this, the ground actually, even to this day, holds a lot of moisture. It's quite soggy, And this is one of my favourite things, getting into the meat and gravy of the sites of these old castles. And although where modern day Luffness House would have occupied part of the castle, this is also part of it. And it's simply beautiful. Look at the defences here that we have. There's some writing on the stone here, which is very difficult to make out. Extremely difficult to make out there. But this here as well, possibly part of an old well. Yeah. Peering into a very old well. So this is part of the 12th century castle. Phenomenal place, because it was reported to be a place of strength. I would like to know what these mounds hold within them. Going way back to that time. I'm sure there are some remnants left in the ground. Apparently in the middle tower house of the modern day Luffness house, the first two stone foundations date back to the castle in the times of the de Lindsey family. But it must have been a huge place. Luffness House is a huge place and the grounds, but to extend out here into this mound now, which is easily just walked by, easily missed, and yet was one of the most prominent Norman castles in all of Scotland. Now there are some debates about where we're going to see next. The story goes that David de Lindsey was on crusade in Egypt, and he had either sustained a wound or he was dying of fever. And this is about 1268, I think. A monk there who had lost his monastery to a Saracen was looking after David. And David made the proposal that if the monk, a Carmelite monk, brought his embalmed body back to Scotland, he would be given grounds here to establish a monastery at Luffness. The remains of that Carmelite Friary, also known as White Friars, are in these grounds. There is some dispute here that the tomb belongs to one John Bickerton, and it's known locally by tradition as Bickerton's tomb and Bickerton's Walk. Bickerton was a tenant here at Luffness, but the dates relating to Bickerton collide for me. Apparently he was tenant here in the late 1200s, but he's also credited with skullduggery and murdering Douglas at the Battle of Otterburn, which is not until 1388, but apparently in revenge for that, Bickerton was killed at his door here at Luffness, and he was entombed here. Experts have had a look at this, and they agree that the recumbent effigy and tomb looks like it would be for a founder. The tomb, as dilapidated as it's become, does look like it was made for someone who's a very prominent person. David de Lindsey was a normal baron, not extremely high rank, but certainly of the noble class. And he became the regent, the mentor, and the tutor for the boy king, the last direct king of the Celtic line, Alexander III. An extremely high position for this knight who had the privilege, honour, and the pressure of looking after the Scottish boy king. As we walk now through this beautiful estate, here are the ruins just ahead of this ancient medieval friary. There's nothing I like better than finding something like this that's not so well known, it's isolated, and nature's taken over in many ways. This is an old place. This would have had kitchens, dormitories, workspaces. But wait till you see this. This is the tomb, the stone coffin, and the knight's effigy on top. You can see the outline of the sword and the shield resting on the chest. The face is extremely well worn now. You can see the outline of the shield there, and the sword. Any mortal remains that were in the stone coffin have long gone. And this is what I believe is the tomb of the knight, David de Lindsey. There is some writing here on the flagstones of the church floor. Very difficult to make out. Literally lost in time. This friary extends to these outbuildings over here, and I've a good idea where some of the stone went. But as I say, these would have been kitchens, dormitories, workspaces for the monks, and they also have some pools over here, which it's reckoned that they kept some fish in there. Not a large friary, but not overly small either. So that monk in Egypt, did he keep the promise to bring the mortal remains of the knight David de Lindsey back here and entomb him over there in dedication to this place? I believe he did. One of the ancient pools that may have been used to keep fish in. There's another over there, and there is another larger one at the back. One thing that is interesting, at Newbattle Abbey in Dalkeith, a certain William de Lindsey, son of David de Lindsey, donated £20 annually, a lot of money back in that medieval period, to pray for the salvation of his soul and his wife Alice, but also to pray for the soul of his father David de Lindsey and his grandmother Margaret de Lindsey. Quite an expense and quite a tribute. None of the records mention the return of David de Lindsey, but that doesn't mean that that Carmelite monk did not keep his promise and bring him back here and inter him in this religious house. I believe this is David de Lindsey, the crusader who died in Egypt, the regent of the boy King Alexander III. I don't believe this is Bickerton or one of the Hepburns. It's possible. I may be wrong. What do you think? I believe some of the stone from the friary here was used to create this old water tower that you can see in the distance, which is now home to kestrels and owls. old water wheel here. Wow. Wow. This is an amazing place. Quite amazing. But most probably stone used from that old medieval friary. I think it's highly likely that because there is a Carmelite Friary here, that monk carried out the wishes of David de Lindsey, and he honoured them by entombing him in the friary, giving prayers regularly for his salvation. The priory was in existence. We know there's a document about it around the year 1293. Not much, but it's something. And this beautiful estate here in East Lothian. After the Lindsays in later years, this place would pass to the Hepburns, and they of course would be involved in the rough wooing in Scotland. And later to the Hope family, who own it to this day, and that's the lovely gentleman who I met this morning, and he gave me a very valuable history lesson from his car. So thank you folks. I hope you've enjoyed this short story of Luffness Castle and the Knight David de Lindsey here on this beautiful 1st of January day in East Lothian. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, comment, share, subscribe. It's been a pleasure having you follow me, making all your comments, giving me your feedback over 2025. I'm humbled by it, and I really enjoy what I do. Here's to a full year ahead of enticing and exciting projects. It's quite amazing to see this pool after some water has fallen. We see the dead trees just rising out of the pond there. But I can imagine this place, quite a productive place, where the monks kept their fish with the water coming in from Aberlady Bay. What a beautiful ancient place nestled here in the estate of Luffness in East Lothian.